Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us. I'm saying that because we're live streaming, by the way, not because I've gone a little bit soft in the head. Welcome. We are doing the last session of the day, the teissTalk, our normal Thursday afternoon event, but live, as normal, but live in front of a live audience in the actual flesh. We're going to be talking today about enhancing AppSec with application security posture management. We'll explain all that in a minute. Don't forget, I would like to ask to get some questions from the audience. If you do have a question at any point, just try and catch my eye and I will get the opportunity to speak to you. But I am very pleased to welcome onto the stage Tiago, John, Danny, and Derek. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, a round of applause for doing absolutely nothing. They can take it back at the end if you don't meet expectations. I'm just saying. So let's start with enhancing AppSec with application security posture management. That sounds like an awful lot of words. I mean, one might also say word salad. An awful lot of words. What does it actually mean? What AppSec and what? Tell me.
Yeah.
Jump in. Go on.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting that we talk about this being a word salad. And if you step back over the last 20 years in cybersecurity, the entire industry is a bit of a word salad, right? Yeah. And I think where this, let's just call it, set of problem statements came about was the fact that we have so many tools across categories from CNAPP, CSPM, CWPP, we have SAST and DAST and SCA, right? And we could go on and on. And I think the reality of what's happened is security teams, developers, DevOps, SRE folks are overwhelmed with the amount of issues and vulnerabilities and flaws that are identified. And they're reaching out to the security teams and saying, we need some help to figure out which of these issues are actually important and why. Where do they fit in the backlog? And then how do I remediate at scale? And so I think that is, regardless of the acronym that we want to use, I think that's the ethos of this space is how can we help simplify risk?
And I think we should also start even before that, which is a thing that most companies that I've worked with in the past failed miserably, which is fully understanding what will be the problems down the line. So for example, things like threat modeling. Do you understand what, for example, using Stride, Past, or whatever is your favorite threat modeling exercise, how you can predict what will be the things that can go wrong when you are designing the software, what will be the implications in terms of data privacy, data sovereignty, client requirements, contractual requirements, everything that you are obliged to deal with, PCI DSS requirements, HIPAA requirements, whatever it is that you do as a company. So having those in place and then properly implement security is where I think is the focus of this. Now, you have things that have been established, like the OWASP SAM with the software assurance maturity model. It's a great tool. I would question the practicality of it. So sorry for the guys of OWASP. Great job, but I think that is a bit too much. Where you can put much more simpler approaches in place, like for example, using the OWASP ISVS as a yardstick. Most people look at ISVS, or most commonly the OWASP top 10, which is just 10 of the controls of the 314, if I recall properly. And use them as, okay, am I doing this as part of my software? Yes or no? And the answer should be very simple. If I'm not doing it, well, one, I should do it. And two, how can I test this in as much as automated possible way? Other things also come into reality right now. For example, quantum resilient cryptography. So crypto booms. It's not when the crypto or Bitcoin's value explodes, but what is the current stack of cryptography that you have across of your software with advances in quantum computer, which I expect within the next couple of years. And we just had that discussion in another panel before, that a lot of countries are literally gathering all the encrypted data and within a couple of years being able to decrypt that data, regardless of what it is, should be in place. So I think there are quite a lot of things that we should talk about this. But there is one, and going back to Derek's point, and I think is a plea to the industry, that you need to start developing tools that talk with other tools properly. So I can put my SCA, my SAST with my DAST, with my VMDR, with whatever, because having beautiful tools that I need to have at least 2 or 3 people per tool to maintain a level of redundancy, it's not sustainable. So I really, really pledge to every part of the industry to start be able to talk with other tools on the ecosystems, even with your competition. If you're trying to build a walled garden, so saying, oh, no, this is my space, I want to keep it, well, consider that your clients might flee away from your little walled garden because your tool does not talk with anything else. And for me, as a CISO, that is a massive problem. We're at a time that training people leaving my teams very quickly is one of the issues that we have in industry. Having tools that cannot talk with each other, cannot talk with my Jiras, my ticket systems, whatever I'm using there, is also something that will prevent me to use you, or that will require a lot of time of internal development to put them to talk and do an end-to-end testing bench to support my development teams.
I suppose the obvious challenge to that suggestion is that interoperability is the first step on the route to commoditization, and we know what happens to prices when services get commoditized.
Yes, but then on the other side, think about the car. When it was a luxury item, and now everyone can buy a car, even if it's a second one.
That's very true, but everyone has a need for a car in a way that...
And a software development company needs a software testing benchmark.
I'm pretty sure the market for cars is bigger than the market for...
I am sure too of that, yeah. Agree on that.
I'm going to jump in here. Danny,
Yeah.
you had a very interesting response to this when we ran through this yesterday.
Was it the response when we first started talking about it?
Well, you started singing.
I did.
Yes.
Okay, well, yeah. This came about because of 2 things. Firstly, I thought when I looked at the diversity on the panel that there's only one way to actually increase that, and I immediately went to My Fair Lady, and I just thought, words. I'm so sick of words. I get words all day through, first from him, now from you. Is that all you blighters can do? I got a little bit of a tremolo there. I used to get into such trouble for singing at school, now you know why. But the interesting thing, one of the challenges is maybe we have, no, it's not just a profitability thing and we want to sell our own products and only our own products and get people locked in, is as soon as we open up to interoperability, then there are other people going to say, hey, look, we can join in with our APIs, etc., etc. But I would answer that is actually we're not doing a particularly brilliant job at the moment with all of these silos. So actually, it's about time to open up. You know, a little bit like kind of the security services, kind of their mantra at the moment is that to be more secure, we have to be more open. And I think there's a sort of a moral aspect. It's like Kirchhoff's law, which of course you're all saying. You're Googling, what's Kirchhoff's law? You know,
is that the one where the bread always lands margarine down?
But if you strap it to a cat, they stay in midair.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Perpetual energy.
Get that experiment through the ethics committee at the university. Believe me. I mean, how many people? I mean, how many? Hopefully, this is the good crowd. We don't know whether anybody's come in here because they want to see that it's probably not being infiltrated by criminals. And also, this whole thing actually sort of demonstrates a little bit of a problem with the industry, because I'm quite sure that as we sit here and argue over the acronyms, our adversaries are not sitting out there saying, oh, we can't do this heist because we haven't got a sexy name for the project yet.
That's true.
Well, I mean, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea might have something to say about that. but there you go. But I think all very valid points, even the ones about cars, but all very valid points. But I think, as we're seeing in the abstract here, that, the number of vulnerabilities that organisations are facing is just massively increasing. The complexity of our estates is broadening. It's thinning in the sense that our attack surface is getting much, much bigger. We've got more on the outside than we have on the inside. and our ability to keep track of all of those vulnerabilities and then perhaps even possibly patch them as well is becoming increasingly difficult here. So, and it's that kind of, this posture management, this ability to maintain at least a hard carapace, if I may, to the attackers is becoming increasingly difficult. How do we address that? What improvements should we be making?
Yeah, and I think the definition of insanity, right, is trying the same approach over and over and expecting a different result. And I think what we've been trying to do as an industry is, many security teams is tossing tickets over the wall to developers, right, and infrastructure teams. And we know that's not working, right? The backlog of risk, Veracode has done a study which is publicly available. It's really interesting. The first 2 years for a given application, you see a decline in risk, 30, 40% from day one to essentially through the second year. But then the next 4 or 5 years, you see this enormous accumulation of security debt. So we know definitively our backlog of risk is growing. And so, our view and philosophy is we need to get to root cause at scale. So where are vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, flaws, where are they originating from, and how can we go to a sort of one-to-many remediation by identifying the source? And ideally, obviously, is giving PRs directly to the developers, right? Not cutting another ticket, but actually moving closer to where we want to go, which is automated remediation.
I think going back to my initial point of conversation, threat modeling, being more proactive than reactive, helped at least my last 3 companies where I worked, not creating more technical depth. And I think that's the most important one, is you already know what you have. It's from the 1980s, great, if you're lucky, sometimes even older. But at the same time, moving forward, knowing that you would need to start repairing what you have old, but not creating more problems for yourself down the line is where it comes. But the good thing and the bad thing in the end of the day is how we can prioritize the thousands. And for example, me and Eric were just discussing this before. How can we easily prioritize the things that we can? For example, in web application security or any code related to security, that's one of the trickiest ones because, you have a vulnerability in this library. Okay, I have this library that is used across a number of other libraries that are packed together. The thing that takes the most time, understand if that library is actually called in any part of the process. Luckily, and again, thank you Veracode and all the other players in the industry, that is now cut the time substantially because with the use of machine learning, it is very easy for us now to understand if this vulnerability is actually exploitable. Is there a fix? Not a fix. Do I need to put the mitigation? Can I integrate this with my WAF to put some mitigation meanwhile until there is a fix or not? So we have evolved quite substantially, I like to think. I think to Derek's point is that we're still using 21st technology with 19th century approach on this. And I think that's the cognitive disjunction here that is not working well for the industry.
Is this 19th century approach, is this don't fix it if it ain't broke?
Yes.
Which means that actually we're just holding on to problems because it's not broken until suddenly it's really broken.
I can think of a very good example of that. So my interest is the organization's perimeter. And recently I had cause to survey payments companies. So payments is a fairly ubiquitous product. It's a bit like water and water companies. And the very vast majority of payments companies, which require integrations to all of those customers that they serve, use an integration methodology for securing their perimeter, which number one is about 20 years old. It's called Client ID and Secret. And what's amazing is that pretty much everyone in this room themselves has moved on from that position. But your question is about what imperative really will make that change. Well, you hope it's not an imperative of theft or breach or service interruption.
Of gargantuan proportions.
Mm-hmm. But the obvious point is that when you have to make a change to something as ubiquitous as how you allow access to your estate, doing it under pressure is going to be very much less palatable than doing it by your own choice.
Sometimes just a matter of cost. Sorry before you go into Daniel. One thing, what is the operating system that you see across most ATMs across the world?
What is the
operating system that
XP?
XP 2000. None of them supported, very easy to break, and a lot of jackpot attacks should already deter the use of that operating system across ATMs.
But hands up those who think Windows XP was the greatest operating system in the world. Come on, it was awesome, right? Danny, you were going to say, jump in.
We talked. This is going to be you described this as a bit of a pub chat. I think it's going to end up as a bit of a pub fight. It's good.
My money's on
It could be fun.
Sorry, I'm just saying.
Yeah. I'm keeping my glasses on, definitely. Definitely. But no, I think one of the things that we have to kind of recognise, talking about, when it's going to, when is it going to break? When is it going to break? It's all broken already. We're just lucky if we get to the next release or decommission something without actually suffering. Now, I can't remember who I need to ascribe this to, but we were having a discussion about this this morning, and somebody pointed out, here we're going to boards and finance and goodness knows who, and we want more money for upgrades and new applications and things that we can buy out there from the stalls with respect to, which do a lot of great things, but they are very expensive. But what we're not doing is the relatively large bang for the buck, hopefully I got that in the right order, of looking at what we're doing in context. So fine applications, fantastic automations, right? That's 19 minutes in, I shall say AI. The A stands for alleged, by the way. People don't seem to realize this. And actually, if you look at what we're doing in context, understand the impact, and maybe take some time to get people to understand that they're also part of the system and to look at our education. And one of the things I was talking about this morning, we're always looking at how to kind of nudge and influence and get people to behave. The fact that we're asking them to use these broken systems, and if we're lucky, we might just get away with it. What we actually should be doing is looking to remove the barriers which are preventing them using things safely. So as we introduce new tools, firstly, kind of the monitoring stuff is probably going to make us kind of feel like, this is probably going to be extremely inappropriate, but it comes from a guy called Tom Lehrer, and make us all feel like Christian Scientists with appendicitis. So what are we actually going to be able to do with it?
I'm struggling with that one.
Okay. They don't take any intervention. So
got you.
So you know what the problem is. It's well defined, but you can't actually. But what you're going to do with it? This old adage, security is everyone's responsibility. It was once said to me by a marketing manager as we had a chat on the corridor, that security and marketing are probably the two things that actually everybody's involved with, which I thought was a really good observation in terms of the organisation. He did steal some of my IP, so I don't want to see the bastard again, but we won't talk about that here. But if we can, make sure that, when we have our acronyms, I have to keep checking this one up. Is it ASPM? I thought that's when you tap your fingers to try and help you get to sleep. But anyway, when you've got your ASPM, now, if you've got this new paradigm, and you are sorting out the good things to do, you will come out with some rules and controls and some things that you can program in, and we can hopefully get to a consensus. So we can work out the good things to do. There are some people nodding, that we can all agree what are the right actions to do. Okay, so it's good to have lists of controls and actions which will make a difference, isn't it? Isn't it? People are nodding. Right, hands up all of you who are like Cyber Essentials, 27001. Oh, you've stopped nodding, haven't you?
I like the idea of a paradigm shift. And again, less of what is the category in the acronym, but I think the whole idea here with the paradigm shift is open ecosystem, as we talked about, which is, hey, if I need to understand application security, I can't look at a single silo anymore, right? Because your cloud native, your CSP, Azure, AWS, they're detecting application risk. You may have some cloud security tools, you may have risk being identified in the repo, and I think the whole idea, this paradigm shift, is we need to move to more of an open ecosystem. We need a capability to be able to correlate across tools, across walled gardens, to your earlier point, and that will help us accelerate and automate and actually get through this backlog of risk. So I really like that concept of paradigm shift, because it's moving away from walled gardens, my siloed view of risk to, hey, what is the full ecosystem telling me about my application?
Yeah, but it's context and objectives, and what is it you're actually trying to achieve with your systems, and where do the systems begin and end? Because as soon as we come up with this new paradigm, then actually I'd probably say it's more parrot time than paradigm, and we start to descend and look under the bonnet and the wiring and talk to things. There's a great competition going on in a few weeks' time. Actually, it's already started, called the UK Cyber Leaders Challenge. And that's brilliant, because that's bringing people together from a really good variety of backgrounds. And we've got a team in, they call themselves No Man's Land. Isn't that brilliant? I love that. And one of the things that I pulled them up for was, they're given a scenario. It's not capture the flag. They have to look at the scenario, how they're going to actually cope with it. And so they looked at it. They realised, there's a threat actor out there using, Mimikatz for harvesting credentials, and they got really excited and started explaining to the panel, who needed to understand what was going on, how Mimikatz works. Don't need to know that.
Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
It does
bad stuff.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It does allow you to see what's going on in memory. If you use it for bad stuff, that is your problem.
It allows you to do bad stuff then.
Oh, that's different.
Blimey, who invited the pedant?
If only.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Make him a professor.
yeah, exactly. Oh, he's perfect in that case, isn't he?
Challenge accepted.
So we're talking about, we know what the problem is. We know what we have to do, which is, speed up, bring quality, bring efficiency or whatever. How do we actually do that? How do we actually fortify our defences with all of these challenges? Because it sounds quite hopeless listening to you all at the moment. How do we actually put this into practice? Many of us, CISOs, security managers, etc., sitting there thinking, great, do I start with Excel or PowerPoint? Or is it something, where do we start to actually address these issues?
I think you need to start with the wetware. I think that is the most important part of the system, is the wetware. It's not the software, it's not the hardware, it's literally the wetware. Going back again to one of the presentations before, where our PPTs, the people, the process, and the technology, I think we're still banging on technology ad exhaustion, and it does not work. We all seen that, regardless if it is about code security, ultimate management, infrastructure deployment, whatever it is, technology by itself is just a tool. So you need to really start with people. The places where I've seen the biggest success was when the companies invested in people. Training developers to gain a conscience about good security practices is very, very important. Having on universities, which, by the way, hint for you, Daniel, I have not seen many with a curriculum about proper code security. I don't know if Manchester have that.
Yeah, I've got a great colleague, a chap called Lucas Cordero, who leads that particular thing. He's got some great testing tools as well, folks.
Good stuff. So thumbs up for Manchester University to put that on the curriculum. But most universities failed miserably in graduating people with good knowledge about code security. And that just reflects on what happens every day. On top of that, you have a lot of people that become developers because they needed a job, which, again, the training that you see out there is very poor about code security. So if you want a magic bullet for this, train your people.
Yeah, I think I would simplify it maybe a little bit and say, first off, continue to shift left and make it super easy when we're shifting left. So building guardrails as we're building cloud infrastructure at scale, building guardrails as we're developing containers and building containerized applications. Make it easy on developers and identify that risk where they're living, which is in the IDE, and surface them really simple to implement fix directly in the IDE. Understand and make sure where you have controls across your CI/CD pipeline. So, we all wish we had a single golden CI/CD pipeline. We don't. So where do we have those shift left guardrails in place and that scanning technology? Where don't we? And then there is going to be risk that's going to come through, that's going to go to the right for a whole bunch of good reasons, right? Hey, we can't block everything. We don't want, our developers still need to build and innovate at scale.
We need to go to market now.
That's right. So we need a way to quickly capture and identify that risk and shift it back left as quickly as possible, which is not ideally done through tickets. It's automated workflow, or ideally, raising PRs back directly to the developer. So I think, in short, it's getting back to the fundamentals and the basics. And yeah, all these acronyms are important, but if we focus on those 4 or 5 fundamentals, I think we'll make a huge shift in risk posture in the industry.
And threat management.
And what?
Threat management.
Yeah.
Before anything, design level, because again, fixing things when they're
Before
already in
you're even
production.
writing code. Yeah, totally.
the
Is it
cost
realistic to get developers to read the threat management report or whatever?
No. It's better. It's empower them to gain the necessary knowledge to do a threat modeling on themselves. I have done this a couple of times, and it actually pays off. The investment of time, the level of knowledge that the developers will gain from the most seniors to involve every one of them, by the way, not just the senior ones, especially involve the more junior ones, because those are be your future in a company. But you do a threat modeling sessions with them for 3, 4, 6, 7 a year, every single product, new service, and a new project. The payoff is massive. The amount of not finding defects down the line just drops substantially. And that, for me, is the proof of the pudding that threat modeling still has a place. A lot of people out there say, threat modeling is not that good exercise, it's just a waste of time. It's not. I think it's one of the best investments that you can do as part of your security programs is doing a proper threat modeling with your teams. Mm-hmm. Start for something simple, pick up, for example, Microsoft Strides will cover like 90% of the things that you need to address in terms of security, HUDs, data privacies, data sovereignties, whatever is the regulation and compliance and the contractual things that you have with your clients, and that's it. When they go to develop, they know exactly what are the things that they need to look for and what are the things they cannot do or put in place.
Yeah.
So allows them to visualize the problem. After 3 months, I can tell that most of my developers were already coming to me, this is the issue, this is the problem, we need to take care of this, we need to take care of that. Perfect, that's it. They are now autonomous to do it on themselves.
But you can also overcome so many of the problems if you look at the underlying issues which will cause security problems later on. So security itself is what we call in the lecture hall, probably not in everyday conversation, a non-functional requirement. Mm-hmm. But everybody wants the machine that goes ping, or the right colors on the screen, or whatever's going to pop out of the blast furnace, or whatever processes that you're actually controlling. And I would say that maybe we have been over the years just a little bit too obsessed with data protection. We're actually protecting people, and we want the actual things to work. And what people forget, particularly I think talking this morning, is a lot of people will say, yeah, but who's interested in our data? They might not be interested necessarily in your data, but they're interested in the machinery and the devices that you've got, because that will give them access and it will give them control, perhaps not to you, but to somebody else in their supply chain. So actually looking at, and we were already talking about the idea of interoperability. But obviously, we want this stuff to be maintainable so that the debt doesn't, we can actually get in and make those changes. Interoperability, lots of words ending with ITI. And again, these things have been thought about before. International standard. Do you know there's an international standard for this? Anyone nod? Nobody's nodding this time. ISO 25010. Have a look at it. It's a great shopping list of all those things that you should have told the developers to build into the product and system to actually give it the longevity that you expect it to have, and also for when you get 5 guys called Mo or whatever on the stage singing that you need to make things interoperable. Oh well, we've already thought about that already.
That's
so
a
we haven't just
title for an ISO standard. I'm just saying.
Absolutely, and why not? And why not? I'm going to set them to music.
We do have a question from the audience. Just wait for the microphone, please. Otherwise, down the front here, Alan. Yeah, what?
The in was ITI. So isn't this all about quality? And we haven't used that word yet. Because if the code was written properly to start with, we wouldn't be chasing the problem. And I think there's something about quality of service and adding that ITI into the conversation, and then doing the secure and build design and operation and all those sort of things. But if we wrote good code to start with, we wouldn't have this as a need. And it's wider than that. We could do the same in product security as well. and change it from a non-functional to a functional requirement, I think would be a really good move.
I don't agree with the initial proposition, but I'm going to let others answer first.
You're saying that security should be part of the QA team?
I think there's a lot of merit in that discussion when you think about product and function. Yes.
Yes, but I would say that every place has its place. Quality of the code, first, could you please define that to me? What is quality code? What is a bad code or is quality code? Yes, please. Can you have this back to Alan? Because I think this is a good question that should be answered properly.
Well, quality is about doing the right thing right the first time. Because if you did it properly, we wouldn't be chasing that problem. And I know I'm repeating myself, but it is absolutely about what are you trying to do? Are you doing it? And if you're not doing it, do it better before you let it loose on your customers and let them do product development.
So proper problem statement.
Absolutely.
That should include quality of code. So minimum amount of bugs and defects on the code. Security of the code.
Those are all the measures of good quality.
Yes, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I fully agree with you, Alan, of course.
Can we take the microphone away? Otherwise, we'll never get to the end of this.
Sorry, just to come. So let me remind myself of the letters. ASPM. ASPM is essentially an evaluation system, and what that evaluation system does is give you intelligence about where to spend energy and resource. And your question is essentially, do you spend resource on prevention or do you spend resource on cure? Benjamin Franklin said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, but Benjamin Franklin wasn't an application developer. I suppose.
As far as we know. As far as we know.
The answer to your question is something that can probably be measured. So do I get better ROI on using my resources to effect, better quality code? Or do I get better use of my resources by looking at my CI/CD process or controls within that and recognizing that I probably, with less focus on quality, can ship code a bit quicker?
I'd suggest that flying a kite in a thunderstorm probably describes the risk appetite of most developers.
I think that's good. I would also say and add, before we come to the next question, is you could write the most secure code today. In 6 months' time, you could pop it with some new vulnerability. So what is today is quality code, and we could do everything right. In 6 months' time, could be popped and would need to be patched and would need to be added into that queue.
A good example of that is if you, for example, compare Microsoft with OpenBSD. OpenBSD, zero vulnerability is exploitable remotely for the last 12 years, if I recall properly. Microsoft, the list is long. Which one is making more money? Because in the end of the day, it's about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a question over there.
Tom, thank you. And also, I think you led quite well into what I was going to ask, right? And I was also going to replay some ISO standards back to Daniel, right? 27022 back to John, right? In as much as you think about the Swift payment platform and how we actually have had to drag out this whole process, right? The bureaucracy that takes all the time, that takes a new standard like payment, like everybody in this room does, right? Which drags us down, right? And means that we cannot go and do what we want to do from a Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency perspective. And you saw this morning, right, the very first thing at the plenary, right, they are faster than us. They are faster than us. So what the hell are we going to do to stop all of these ISO standards dragging us down? What can we do today? What can these people do today or tomorrow to make sure that we actually improve our position? Because guess what? If we go and adhere to a new ISO standard, it's going to take us a shit ton of time, and we're all going to be burnt.
So I think you've kind of asked and answered your own question. ISO standards are as relevant as you decide that they are. So if everyone in this room keeps paying auditors to do cursory glances at their information security policy so they can get a tick in a box somewhere, it'll continue to be relevant. But if you say, actually, the bar of ISO is lower than the floor, and I don't care. And to be honest, if I'm engaging with you as an organization and you think that this stamp on my company provides you any value whatsoever, then I've probably got concerns about your value judgments. If I was going to, and I'm been heavily engaged with PCI, Council, and all these kind of things, they're a model for a very particular purpose. There are standards bodies like the OIDF, which take very wide opinion and do change things quickly and do represent not the zenith, but certainly a forward-facing view of application security. And they have certification frameworks. But the fundamental answer to your question is it's as relevant as you make it.
We have another question down the front here. Thank you, Sachin.
So we have been asking and telling so many people using these tools like CSPM or any of the other tools, and most of the companies, most of the top big names, if you see in the market, they get hacked. And if I talk about the AI, right, recently Grok got hacked, and they have been following all these practices. They're having compliances, they are having all these strategies, they have been following OWASP top 10, whether it is SANS 25 or any other. So what do you think? Does the ASPM can actually help mitigate the such risk once the product is launched from the sandbox to the production environment? Because what I feel all these companies are having responsible disclosure policies, and these companies are still having the vulnerabilities. And if we bring ASPM in the picture, would it be able to help us reduce such risk?
Depends how you take it. Picking up what John just said, you can make compliance a tick in the box exercise, or you make it a proper exercise to leverage and bring your security levels up. Depends how you take it, no more than this.
It's attitude, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's attitude. Yeah. You need to turn these things round. If we really believe in security, then actually the kind of stuff which is now being has been codified into standards, which has been people's experience of what has worked and sometimes what hasn't, often distilled a little bit too much, so people don't understand why something is there. People will end up just doing it as that. If people are actually have got security in mind, then actually compliance should be a byproduct. We shouldn't have to actually worry about it. And I think this has been much of the misuse. I used to work for IASME. I'm one of the founders. You might have heard of IASME if you're involved with Cyber Essentials. Cyber Essentials, I don't know why it gets such a bad press, because people say, it's not enough. It's not supposed to be the be-all and end-all. It was always supposed to be a starting point. And NCSC, and I was there in the early days. There was a conference used to go on in York. It was the precursor to what is now Cyber UK, and it was such a struggle to get people to say, what can we identify which will make the biggest difference? And it's recognizing that yes, this is a matter of moving, getting as much as we can do. I think the most important word for our cyber security or our security, our operation of our technologies is some people talk about resilience. I think it's being able to cope. I think it's all about being able to cope. So when bad stuff happens, we can actually minimize the difference. There is a path. I think it's a matter of if ASPM, if I've got all of those letters in the right order, then I think great. If that helps people, gives people a focus. But also at the same time, they still need to remember that actually, there is no silo, because you've got that application that has to work with other other areas to start with. We've got our firmware, we've got our operating systems. Goodness knows how many other applications working as well. So it is complex. It is difficult, and we will fail. Perhaps the biggest thing that we have done as an industry, is this an industry? I don't know, but it's a useful label to use, is to move away. Remember the old days when somebody was breached and we used to go, ha ha, and now Now, thank God, it is very much, we look at it and say, there, but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
I think there's a much better community feeling in that. Now, if we can get that through our supply chain of the people providing product and developers and integrators and all of that kind of side as well, get that collaboration and cooperation all the way through to the users who, let's face it, we're saying, please protect our multi-billion-pound assets, but we're going to give you this click-through PowerPoint to make sure that you know how to secure that. Yeah, I know you're protecting billions of pounds, and I know you're only paying you £12.21, is it, from April, to protect those. So we have to actually, it comes to a certain degree to the overall fairness. Or perhaps, worst case, recognising that life isn't fair, which is obviously what we all tell our children.
But also remember one thing, if I just, fundamentals are called fundamentals for a reason. Vulnerability management is a fundamental. Information access management is a fundamental. Role-based access controls are fundamental. These three represent, I will gather, 99% of all the data breaches that you've seen. The poor implementation of these three things, vulnerability management, information access management, and role-based access controls, represent the biggest threats that you have across. Now, you tell me, what is the level of technology that you need to put these three done right? None, or very few.
The basics that you already have to begin with.
No, not the basics. I don't
No. The technology is the basics that you have to begin with.
The fundamentals, because again, they're not basics. They're not easy to do properly. Well, let's be honest. They're not implementing all these three properly. They're not easy for any given point. But once done, and once established in any company, they will work in your favor for the rest of the lifetime of the company. You all know that. Also, that is the biggest problem. Everyone wants to be admin on their own backyard, right? I'll give them all super admin rights for everyone. Developers, they're almost like gods, right? They can do everything and create whatever accounts and almost even sometimes even their own backdoors in there.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, and I agree. It's about the fundamentals. I would also say ASPM is not a silver bullet, but you can't defend what you can't see, right? And we clearly have a visibility gap. We have vulnerabilities, flaws, misconfigurations that exist that aren't being surfaced. They aren't being routed in an automated way to the right teams to address. And so that is a problem that can be solved by this sort of general category of solutions. And it's not a silver bullet. We've got to patch, we've got to do vulnerability management, we've got to scan code at scale on every push, we've got to integrate with the CI/CD, right? But it's another tool to help raise visibility of the issues that matter most.
We've got another question down the front. While the microphone's moving, I would say, Tiago, I think you're absolutely right. It is difficult. Very often in any kind of organisation that has any kind of history, you've got some kind of legacy thing that you're trying to adapt into as well. And that's always going to be throwing in a clog in the works? No, whatever. You know what I mean? It's always going to screw it up.
We just need to reorganize the skeletons in the closet in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. We'll have the skulls this way. Yes, question.
Hi. Yeah, I think the true definition really of quality is something functioning as it should do over a period of time. So if, in my opinion, one of the real problems is none of us has a crystal ball. I don't know that anybody remembers the year 2000 issue, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Shout out for that one. Well, I was a coder at the time, and I guess like anybody operating in this space at that time, the world exploded, didn't it? Everything was going to end, basically. And I think with that in mind, the real problem again is probably the shift in landscape. And for me, it's the expectation that things will go wrong that is key to this, not expecting to create bulletproof software where we've got a crystal ball to see what the problem down the corner looks like. It's not going to happen. But how resilient can we be by developing systems and processes that expect it to fail? And I think that's probably where the focus comes.
I mean, I think to that point, I think it's very much, it's a bit like buying from a cybersecurity vendor. The cost of the software itself or whatever you're buying isn't that great. The maintenance of it is the thing that hits you year after year after year. The problem is when you code a piece of software, you pay for the coding. you forget about the maintenance. That's tomorrow's problem. You know, tomorrow's me is going to curse today's me to heck and back because I've not funded the maintenance of it.
And that's been I think that's been the case for a long time, because we've got all of these systems, some of which are running in major organizations, and they don't switch them off because they worry about being able to switch them back on again. To put it bluntly, the developers have either retired, or in some cases will have actually passed. Yeah, well, I was trying to think of a nice way of saying it. I don't want people going home, in tears. I don't want people going home on a positive note.
They shouldn't have written poor code. I mean, the punishment for poor code is clear.
Yeah, but it's like Andrea's point. All of that work that went on 2000. At the time, it was brilliant code because it saved so much and allowed things to run. Now things are totally out of hand. It used to be back in the day. Well, first I was thinking the day I'm thinking of was the 14th of October, 1985, which was my first job outside college, and I was told by my supervisor on that very first day at a firm called Ferranti, if it's easy, you're not doing it right. But all of that hard work to get, and it was great because if you got a piece of software, no matter which processor you ran on, it would run. Okay, if you bought the fancy stuff, the really expensive stuff, then it would run faster. The other stuff. Although there were certain companies, no names, no pack drill, who would put loops into their fast stuff to slow it down, and it was the same bloody set of chips.
That was the turbo button on the old computers, wasn't it? Yeah. Remember those?
No,
on the beige boxes.
No, you're thinking of the boss key on Leisure Suit Larry.
Now you're showing your age.
Well, we cannot all be COBOL programmers, right?
No, absolutely. Exactly. Any other questions, or should we move on? Good, let's move on. So we're talking about, how do we prioritize, all of these requirements, all of this patching, all of these vulnerabilities, all of these upgrades, etc. How do we prioritize this practically?
Yeah.
What's going to kill us today versus what's going to kill us tomorrow is actually a really difficult question to answer in complex environments.
Talk to the accountants, the doctors, the nurses, the builders, the all the people who use these systems. Find out what it is they really need. Understand the impact. Oh my goodness! Yeah, we didn't realise that ransomware would actually stop us analysing all of those forensic samples and pathology samples.
Yeah. A few practical recommendations. Number one, let's deprioritize issues. For example, vulnerability that is never actually loaded into memory, that's not in production, is not running. Let's not send that over to a developer and a ticket that they review, and they're like, why am I wasting my time? If there is a vulnerability that's at runtime and a container is not internet facing, right? That's another great example of how do we deprioritize. So I think trying to identify these use cases where you can gather context about your runtime environment, about your application, and then use that, hey, this particular vulnerability is on the development environment versus production environment. One's more important than the other. Now, of course, ideally, we'd remediate everything. We'd remediate the whole backlog. That's the ideal world that we don't live in. Therefore, what's super important is what's most urgent based on the context that matters, and doing it in a scalable way. Because you can't have a human reviewing each vulnerability to say, okay, which container is this in? What's the posture of this particular running container and pod and cluster? Yeah. You've got to do that in an automated way,
that's where I think the complexity comes in.
That's where the complexity comes in.
So I'm very interested in, no, it's simple.
I think it is simple because we are very lucky to work with organizations like FIRST that developed the CVSS version 4, but more important than that, also provides us the metrics of the EPSS, exploitability parameters. So you can very easily calculate the risk, and if you want a very simplistic approach at multiplying one by the other, you actually have the risk of that vulnerability. So if the EPSS is 0.5, even if the criticality is 10, you could argue that your chance is like 50-50 of getting a hit. Personal take? Oh, wait. Personal take? I will still patch it, okay? So if you want to do a really proper, measurable, risk-managed approach, CVSS version 4 total contains pretty much everything that you can think of, including what will be the impact on the criticality of your assets, and with EPSS core gives you a good approach to that. Again, my take, patch everything that you can when it comes to the infrastructure, because if you're just waiting to be hit 10%, when you are trying to win the Euro Millions, is not that great, but if you're trying to prevent a big hit, you sure get that number very quickly. Second is about vulnerabilities in code. Again, as we discussed, I think that is the most complex one.
Yep.
But I think would be first, is it fixable? Because you have a lot of vulnerabilities in there. There is no fix available. So if there is no fix available, I would put those on hold. Second is this vulnerability part of the work on the code? Is this function that have the vulnerability been called, or just packed among the bigger library that's been unused? So if it is being used, it's being called, that is one that should also be used. And then what is the level of exploit? Is a mature exploit? Is a POC? Very few companies, unfortunately, yet provide you what is also the attack tree. So when you get inside of your systems, what will be the easiest way to exploit certain vulnerability inside of your infrastructure or of your code to get? There are a few, not many, and hopefully we'll see more. That also helps you because it gives you exactly what will be the entrance points on your external face or interactions with your clients, regardless if it's APIs, web applications, or mobile applications, to get those.
And that's why your architecture is just so important.
Exactly.
Don't abandon the overall architecture. We've had this habit, understandably, because it's exciting and sometimes it's easier just to connect everything to everywhere. And next thing you know, when something does go wrong, it might have been something extremely unlikely, but somebody's discovered it and it goes through through a short grandparent.
That meme of the world being built on top of very prickly stone of
Yes,
open source
the
software
XKCD.
there. Exactly. That one is still my favorite representation how we build software these days. But again, with the good level of tool without going crazy expensive, you will have, I would say, a good enough coverage. Would it cover everything? Most likely not. So you always have certain parts. But again, your testing does not end when the system enters in production. So for example, in any single company I work, I make sure that we continue to test the code even after being run in production, just in case something that we have never thought about pops out in there, because that's what you need to do.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's the good fundamental base. I think to your point, the complexity arises when you think about those vulnerabilities in your particular environment, right? So like, hey, is this vulnerability reachable or not? Or
Yes, that was going to be my point I was going to make.
It's a very challenging question to answer, right? Is this method vulnerable or not? And when you're talking about the scale of a Fortune 500, where they've got millions of vulnerabilities, I think that's where the complexity arises. And so I agree with you, sort of CVSS, using EPSS, doing all that vuln prioritization, injecting automation around criticality, the application type, that's a great starting point. But then it's, okay, now that we've moved to the next layer of complexity, we still have a million vulnerabilities, how do we automate understanding runtime and how those vulnerabilities are interacting in my particular environment? And I think that's really where ASPM as a solution can help automate a lot of these contextual analysis problems.
And ask, if somebody takes advantage of that, can I cope? Or can we cope as an organization?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, then yeah, no problem. Let's get on with the other vulnerabilities where we can't.
Yes, great point.
Excellent. We've come to the end. We've just got a few minutes left. What I normally do in a teissTalk, anybody who's seen this, is you each get a chance to give our audience some advice on what they should do when they get to their desks tomorrow morning when it comes to this topic. What's the practical thing that they should do? Tiago, I'm going to start with you.
I would say pick up all your developers, go and show them the OWASP by SVS, and try to run with them all the controls that you have in there. You have one of the best tools to understand how secure is your code. I think that would be the best option of usage of time of your developers and security team, who's going to review all your applications against OWASP ISVS, not just the top 10, go through the entire stack. You will find a lot of things that will make your software better and more secure in the end of the day.
John.
If you spend all of your time looking at this type of vulnerability and looking at your own estate without looking hard at your perimeter and your integration points, you might find that you're standing on the back of a whale fishing for minnows.
I like it. Danny, you can sing yours if you want.
No, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm going to go standards. I was thinking of talking about, was it hurricanes? Was it Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire hurricanes hardly happened, but kind of I think climate change has put the kibosh on that song. But no, think about your supply chain. Think about your supply chain as actually as part of your architecture, and think about all of those poor in various degrees, small to medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs, upon whom are actually you rely, and they are a component. So I'm going to go standards again, but it's a free standard, so that's good, and it's called it was the last IASME Cyber Assurance. And so, people worry about all the different standards and all the different parts. And do you have a bit which explains how it's assessed, how it's marked, how it handles risk? What controls do you need? When that was developed, the idea being it was a one-stop shop, a one-stop guide, a little bit of risk management, a little bit of prescription, but just the kind of balance to actually advise and help. And just, the more that we can do throughout our supply chains and realize that, we are one great, big community. Obviously there are transactions, there are transactions to be made with, those people in your supply chain, will need your help. I don't know how many of you are from large organizations or small organizations, but just remember those small organizations upon whom you rely and have great expectations. We need some sort of ethical, moral, communal cyber levy of expertise going through, and the people at IASME actually capture this quite well. So, there is good guidance out there, and like I say, it's free. Because that's the other odd thing with standards. Standards as a document, we're going to pay £100 for these few sheets. Well, it's an expensive for a document compared to when you're going down to Waterstones, but divide that £100 by 100 customers, and actually it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, I agree with everything panelists here said. I would say one of the first things to do is to get your hands around your estate and the posture of your estate. So as you look across the applications in your organizations, where do you have controls in place from a detection point of view? Do I have capability to detect risk from pre-coding, threat modeling, all the way to runtime? So what is the current posture, and where do you have controls? And then as you look across your application estate, which ones are riskiest and why? And focus on the origins of risk that are driving, whether it's developers, specific repositories, specific teams, and then use that intervention to drive how you invest in buying down risk over time.
Excellent, thank you. So that brings us to the end. When we run the credits, because we are still live, please remain seated. We have a couple of announcements to make. But before then, I would just really like to thank Tiago, John, Danny and Derek for your participation. Please, a round of applause for your panel.